Hey everybody, I'm Matt Shares, host of the SBI podcast. My guest this week is Mike Volpe, the Chief Marketing Officer for Cybereason. Mike is a superstar CMO, and he and I are going to spend time talking about account-based marketing. I hope you enjoy the show.
From SBI's Executive Briefing Center in Dallas, Texas, the most watched and listened to content in B2B sales and marketing, it's the SBI podcast with your host, Matt Shares.
Welcome to the SBI podcast, a weekly show dedicated to helping you make your number. Today, we are going to demonstrate how to replace leads with real opportunities for the sales team through the use of account-based marketing. So, ABM is the effort performed by both marketing and sales to replace leads with opportunities for the sales team. So why is this important topic? Demand generation and lead management does not work for companies with business models dependent on a small number of accounts, but who spend a lot. Waiting for dream accounts to come to you will result in missing your revenue targets. So if you live and die by the big deal, growing revenue faster than your industry and your competitors requires a shift to account-based marketing. My name is Matt Shares. I'm the CEO of SBI, and I'm also your host. Joining me in the studio, as always, is my fabulous co-host, Melissa Valdez. Hi, Melissa.
Hello, Matt. This is great. It's definitely been a hot topic here at the studio lately.
It has. So we're excited to have you. And I'm very excited to welcome Mike Volpe, the Chief Marketing Officer for Cybereason. Mike is a bit of a superstar and a godfather in the world of marketing and inbound marketing. So we're big fans of Mike and his career. So Mike, welcome to the show. And please introduce yourself to the audience.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is going to be a lot of fun. I'm Mike Volpe. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Cybereason, which is a cybersecurity company that offers software and services to protect the enterprise.
So Mike, a couple of fun facts. I know you spent some time in your prior life sort of starting the movement of inbound marketing in HubSpot, so you were beyond qualified to talk about marketing excellence. But prior to that, you also played a little bit of football, and my fun facts tell me that you may have won a couple of awards. So any nuggets you want to share as people think about you as both offensive lineman and CMO? Because you typically don't see those people in the same body.
Yeah, I feel like the athletes kind of end up in sales a little bit more, and it's more the creative types that end up in marketing, I'd say typically, right? But no, yeah, it's well, I'll just qualify and say I played Division III, so I'm not sure it qualifies as football.
Hey man, don't there's no need to diminish it. So you've got a hockey player interviewing a football player. So if nothing else, we can just throw stuff at each other. Yeah. So Melissa, before Mike and I get started, I think the audience might want to follow along. So can you share with them how they can do that?
Yes, absolutely. And you forgot there's a dancer in the room too, Matt.
Oh, hello. That's right. I'm sorry. That's right.
Dancing
we welcome
is a
cheerleaders.
Sport. Cheerleading and dancing is a sport. So if you'd like to follow along, if you have your 2018 How to Make Your Number workbook, you will turn to the marketing strategy section on account-based marketing. If you don't have a copy of this fabulous book, please go to sbi.tips/2018 workbook, and you can download your very own copy.
All right, so Mike and I are going to jump into the questions. So Mike, this first segment you and I are going to cover, we're going to try to answer this question, when does ABM make sense for a company? So sort of thinking a little more strategically on this first segment. So I guess, what do you look for in deal sizes that make up the total revenue to determine if ABM is right for your company?
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like anytime there's multiple buyer personas that are involved in getting a deal done, that an ABM mindset would make sense. But that being said, I think that there's sort of big ABM and there's small ABM. Small ABM is kind of, you're thinking about the different buyers that are involved, but it might be a smaller deal, and you can't really make a lot of custom investments in each deal,
right?
In terms of like go to market, like one account at a time. And so I would say for kind of big ABM, which would be when you're doing much more of a targeted strategy for either a small number of accounts or even account by account, I think it's at least, on an annualized basis, kind of a revenue of, at least a couple 100,000, probably 100, 200,000 on the low end, and then certainly going up into millions from there.
Right. So that's an interesting concept, big ABM versus small ABM. I have not heard that before. So unpack that a little bit, because I think many of your peers sort of struggle with is it right for me? Where do I draw that line, right? I mean, you grew up and spent a bunch of time at HubSpot where it was high volume, right? Top of the funnel, multiple, two-figure deals, if you will. So talk a little bit about that concept of big ABM, small ABM, and how CMOs listening might unpack that.
Yeah, I think that, the idea of ABM is that you're trying to target an individual account to be highly personalized to them. But the other part of it is that, it's account-based marketing instead of like lead-based marketing or individual contact-based marketing. And even smaller deals, even a $50,000 deal, typically you have a couple different buyers involved. And so even if all you're doing is customizing some stuff electronically or trying to make sure you have a couple different contacts per account or things like that, even at that level, I think to think about, there's maybe a user and then an economic buyer, or maybe there might be an executive involved as an approver at some point during the process. You still need to keep in mind that there's multiple personas there that you're both marketing and selling to.
Yeah.
Now, at the bigger end, you're talking about a lot more personalization, a lot more customization, and even having things, aimed at only one, marketing programs or sales activities aimed at one specific account, customized for them.
Right. So, Mike, I guess when you think about the target market of the accounts that come into play for determining the fit, so you talked about big ABM, small ABM, like that. You talked about multiple buyer personas, right? Isolating the economic buyer back to the old early days of Miller Hyman when they taught us that back in the 80s and 90s, and that was the first sales methodology I used. How have you looked at the target market relative to segments when determining a fit with ABM? Have you over-prioritized certain segments where maybe they're on the strategic path? Have you under-prioritized or deprioritized others? How do you think about the segment element of targets relative to ABM?
Yeah, so with big ABM, which I think is kind of what we're focused on now, less is definitely more in terms of number of accounts, right? And I think if you can kind of group at least into maybe you have 4 to 6 kind of go-to-market plays.
Yep.
Those are often by vertical industry.
Yep.
Like for us within cybersecurity, everyone cares about cybersecurity, but a manufacturer has some different things that they care about versus a financial services company, right?
Yep.
And so an individual rep might have, 4 to 6 kind of buckets of maybe 4 to 6 accounts in each one.
Yep.
That gives you a sense of sort of like the size. And kind of break it down on that sort of level. So I think you're talking usually 20 to maybe 50 accounts kind of per rep, at any kind of decent deal size. But then even breaking that down further and kind of like, okay, for these 4 or 6, we're going to have our manufacturing go-to-market motion going, right? And these others, the other accounts are inventory. That's going to be a financial services go-to-market motion, yeah.
Right. So not only at the size of company, size of deal, complexity of sale, but then getting to another level relative to sector or vertical and deploying specific marketing and sales motion into those companies. I think that's where a lot of folks fall short, is they go single sales process, single marketing motion into multiple verticals. And if you're running a single play right now as someone who's listening to this, I think you can take Mike's advice. It's got to be customized. That's the way the world's moving. So, Mike, last question on this segment. A lot of B2B companies find that successful demand gen efforts hit a wall. Is that an indicator of a need to shift resources to ABM, or is it the fact that they're running the wrong demand gen strategy, or is it a combination?
It could be either, right? I think if you're selling bigger deals and you're not doing ABM, then you probably are doing something wrong.
Yeah.
And again, an ABM doesn't. It's funny. It's like ABM is a different axis than like inbound or outbound.
Yeah.
I feel like you can have inbound ABM, you can have outbound ABM, but you should be doing some form of ABM if you're selling these bigger deals. And so, if you're not doing it, and you're hitting a wall with demand gen, then it's definitely something you should dive into.
Right. All right, very good. So we're going to take a quick break from the interview, but before we do that, if you notice Mike's logo, Mike, I gotta ask, that is a cool-looking logo. So give us the 30 seconds on that logo and what that means.
Yeah, so essentially the executive summary is that what our technology does is it silently hunts for threats within your entire corporate environment throughout the whole enterprise. And we're especially good at connecting the dots between a bunch of very small, lower-level things, but seeing the patterns among those.
Okay.
And I don't know, people that don't know this, owls, when they fly, when they're predatory birds, and when they fly totally silently. Like their wings are specially designed to be completely silent. So they hunt at night and they're totally silent. All of a sudden they'll just pop down and grab a mouse or a rabbit or whatever it is. And we feel like that really embraces the embodiment of our technology.
Very nice. The owl as a killer. I never ever thought about it like that. So I'm continuing to learn new things. So Melissa, on that, can you, I think you've got something you want to share with the team.
Tough to follow up, silent,
Yes.
deadly killer there.
Yes.
For those of you who just received your revenue growth target for the year, you're probably wondering, how am I going to make my number? So SBI has developed a web-based self-assessment to help you evaluate that probability. You can see where you stack up against emerging best practices of market leaders. And to take this fabulous assessment, you will go to sbi.tips/revenue growth diagnostic.
All right. Welcome back. You're listening to the SBI podcast. I'm your host, Matt Shares, and today's guest is Mike Volpe, the CMO for Cybereason. So today, Mike and I are demonstrating how to replace leads with real opportunities for the sales team through the use of account-based marketing. So we're going to jump back into the questions. And in this segment, Mike and I are going to tackle what a successful ABM program should look like. Many of you are in the process of building this. This is new, so we're going to tackle what this sort of construct looks like. So Mike, how can marketing use ABM to support sales, to reach new buyers and influencers, and identify these new opportunities? So think about this through the lens of the marketer, as their internal customer with sales.
Yeah, so I think that the biggest thing is you should definitely work with the sales team and even, frankly, the product team as well, and identify who are the key buyer personas. And I know we have basically about 5 of those that we've identified at Cybereason, ranging anywhere from, a lower level security analyst who's very technical and be the user of the product, through to a VP of security or chief security officer. And then even for us, the CIO, and then often the CFO or COO, or sometimes even CEO play a role in the decision-making process as well. And so the first thing to do is definitely identify all those different buyer personas. Second thing to do would be to identify any differences in sort of your go-to-market, your messaging, and your motions by industry. And then you sort of mash those two up in like a big matrix. And then you say, okay, for each account, I'm going to have those 5 personas. What are the different plays I'm going to run against each of those personas, coordinated between marketing and sales? And so an analyst at a manufacturing company, you might do, play 1.
Yeah.
And then you coordinate that for that particular account with stuff you're doing at the C-level, with stuff you're doing with other influencers. It's really about sort of like having multiple plays available. And to go back to the football analogy, it's like marketing kind of sets up this playbook.
Yep.
And then in a lot of ways, you have to sort of like mix and match the different plays and put that into effect for each individual account.
That was good. Very good. So for those listening, Mike talked about personas. So if you don't have personas, which are fictional representations of who your ideal buyer is at the individual level, if you sell to procurement, if you sell to the CIO, you sell to the CFO. If you don't have that, you can't even enter the game on ABM. That's number 1. Number 2, you've got to have different plays at the vertical level because they're solving different problems. So Mike talked about manufacturing, financial services, right? Those different verticals, understanding that. Third thing is the interlock between product marketing and sales. I can't overemphasize that. So as you guys are listening and thinking about how do I implement this, those would be 3 things to think about on your checklist. So Mike, can we share, without any, breaching any confidentiality, can you maybe share a specific example where you've been able to execute this with the team and the benefits of this interlock relative to driving ABM?
Yeah, absolutely. So a big financial services firm was sort of the target customer, which I won't reveal who they are, but I'll talk about some of the specific plays.
Sure.
And so for their analyst level, this was a program of reaching out to them with things that they enjoy, right? So highly technical, very geeky, nerdy audience. So sending them things like Nerf guns and T-shirts and like toys and gadgets, things like that, and engaging them with very technical content. So lots of things about different like security queries and how the system works and how other people use it to hunt threats and reduce the amount of noise in their environment, things like that. Combining that with, at the executive level, things like more of a business-focused content. So we have like a a workbook we've created of like, what does the next generation chief security officer look like? What are the skills you need to use to evolve as a chief security officer? Things like that, combined with, programs like offering Bose headphones in exchange for taking a meeting to kind of kick things off at the beginning of the process. And then through the process, trying to pair them up with like references and current customers that are willing to make reference calls, things like that. And then pairing that up with events as well. So we have both kind of like business level events that are more executive level, and then more technical events that are often even online. Those can be webinars and things like that too. But it's just intermixing those different plays kind of like at each step of the way.
What a great example. What I took from that, the difference between technical content versus business content, and the fact that you were using multiple modes of delivery. Direct mail, right, versus a direct referral plain matchmaker versus sending over just the kind of standard business case and, how would a business leader who's looking at it in a very netted out fashion would look at it. So that's very, very good. So then, Mike, on that, if we click on that, if that got us in the door, how can marketing then drive sales activity using ABM with existing opportunities? So let's say I'm 50%, I'm looking at my forecast. I've got 3 deals that I need to close between now and the end of the quarter. I'm sales, you're marketing. How do you help drive sales activity?
Yeah, so I think it's a lot of the same. It's just sort of like the content shifts a little bit, right? So it's the same approach. Like you want to be hitting multiple personas in different ways. I'll tell you, for Q4, we've mapped out all the accounts that are currently in the forecast for Q4.
Yep.
And then we've identified about 6 different plays, many of which work against these different personas that we have. And our goal, marketing's goal for Q4, is to run at least 4 plays against every account that's in the forecast this quarter, right? And so I think that's a way to kind of break it down for your marketing team and say, okay, it's one thing, do a lot of stuff, hit all the accounts, hit the different personas, but we have it broken down literally into a spreadsheet, and we're just going to go through and like check off the boxes and make sure we hit at least each account at least 4 different ways, right? And we have got some differences there by industry and some other things, but at a high level, it's like the number of accounts times 4 is the number of things that I need to put against that, and it's a very easy thing to measure. It's a good target to give your team as well.
Yeah, no kidding. That's fantastic. So you think about the role, so the level you guys are going to relative to personalized content and messaging at the account level is open the forecast, take a look at the must-win deals, and we've got a minimum number of plays we're going to run into multiple personas. So I would love to be a salesperson and you're at Cybereason to get that level of support out of marketing as a former card-carrying
we're hiring, so anybody watching that's looking, they should feel free to apply.
Yeah, between the owls and the marketing support, man, that's a good place to work. I like it. So, Mike, last part in this segment, if you think about the roles of marketing and sales in an ABM program, you've seen multiple marketing organizations, you've constructed them. What are the roles that you think are critical in both sales and marketing if you're going to run ABM successfully?
Yeah, so this is interesting. At a high level, I feel like sales is really the quarterback for any individual deal, and marketing kind of plays more of this like offensive coordinator, setting up what the playbook is, or this coach sort of setting up what the playbook is.
Yeah,
and it kind of changes. Like for enterprise sales, for big deals, I feel like the sales rep is more like Tom Brady or Peyton Manning, and they're on the field and they have a huge amount of authority to audible and kind of run the offense.
Or Russell Wilson, if you're a Seahawks fan, you would say Russell Wilson. I'm just throwing that out there for those of us that don't really like the Patriots. Anyways.
Fair enough. We got an East Coast, West Coast thing here, but that's fine. That's fine. Yeah. And then the flip side would be for the smaller deals, right? It's more like your high school quarterback.
Yep.
And I've seen it with inside sales teams. It's like, no. Run the play we called, right? Because we need to do this 10,000 times. We have like lots of different reps, and it's like needs to be very repeatable. Yeah. And so we need to just like set people up for success. It needs to be much more sticking to the script, right? And it's a little bit more of a process. So in the world of this bigger sort of enterprise deal, I feel like some of the key responsibilities are you need to have a strong sales ops team.
Yeah.
You need to have a strong sales enablement team, which is sometimes in marketing, sometimes in sales.
Yeah.
That kind of varies. Usually that's part of product marketing as well, in my experience. And then you need a really strong demand gen team that has a couple components. One is a strong marketing ops team, You also need really, really strong field marketing, right?
Yep.
And field marketing is kind of where the rubber meets the road. If you got these marketers that are on the, the regional calls with, each regional RVP, helping them to run the right plays, letting them know what plays are available, because a lot of times marketing is playing with new things. And there's a lot thrown at you as a field rep, and their goal is to kind of, really be that coordination and help bring things to life at a local level. Those are really some of the roles to kind of put it all together.
Yeah, that's great. Mike, it's funny you mentioned field marketing. In the work that we do and the work specifically that I do with a lot of CEOs relative to their executive teams, and you sort of look at an org chart, field marketing is one of these, it's becoming a little bit of a lost position where people aren't really sure. Everybody went crazy on demand gen. We've got to produce content. Maybe I need content capability internally, maybe I outsource it. But the connectivity of field marketing to drive content and to drive messaging into the field, that's one of the things I take from what you're saying relative to how you connect marketing and sales, and you kind of take ABM all the way down to the street, no?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd say a lot of times field marketing has kind of been a glorified events position, where it's like, oh, get me a bunch of reservations at Morton's for steak dinners and coordinate all these events, right? But in actuality, under this ABM playbook, it's much more of like a mini CMO position.
Yeah.
They need to understand everything that's happening in the whole marketing mix and bring that to life on a regional level.
Yes.
So I think sometimes, too, you've got to hire the right profile of person for the role as well.
Yeah, I know we got to take a break here, but you're so right about field marketing and the reinvention of that. But that mini CMO, right? If you kind of think about the position they play, that's actually a great illustration. So, Mike, last question. You laid out a lot. If I'm listening to this, I'm saying, oh my goodness, how long will this take me to stand up a level of ABM sophistication that I can do what Mike is describing? Any thoughts on time horizon for the listeners on how long it takes?
I think, well, it's one of those things. It's like it's very easy to get started, but it takes a lifetime to master, right? So I think you can do some of the basic things, and you can see results within kind of 90 days and see some improvement in 90 days. But it can be. I mean, I've been here for a year and a half, and I still feel like we have a long way to go to get to where we want to be. That being said, I think we've made a ton of progress in the last year and a half. So it's a little bit of both. I think you can get some progress within 90 days, and then it can be a long time before this really infiltrates the thinking of the whole organization.
Right. Very good. That was a rich segment. So we're going to take another break, and Melissa has some goodies to share with you and another resource to help you make your number. So, yes, Melissa?
Absolutely. So if you need some coaching, if you will, on how to develop your own personas and your ABM playbook, consider an interactive workshop here at the studio in Dallas, Texas, with one of our subject matter experts. We have a pretty fabulous facility here, so I personally invite you to come check it out. It's pretty amazing, right? And as Matt says, if nothing else, we have a full bar here, so it's pretty fantastic. But to get a feel for what's covered in these productive workshops, go to sbi.tips/2018 workbook. Thanks, Matt.
All right, so this is our last segment with Mike demonstrating how to implement account-based marketing. So we're going to jump back into the questions. And in this final segment, Mike and I are going to cover how you can align marketing and sales in an ABM world. So traditionally, if you think about the sales team owning strategic account planning, right, for identified named accounts in an ABM environment. We've all been around for a long time, and the use of an account plan was a very static document. So Mike, when you implement ABM, and I know you talked about how it is iterative, and I completely agree with you. We eat our own dog food, and we do that as well. How is the account planning process performed?
Yeah, so I think it's one of those where sales needs to completely buy into it. So from the beginning, in terms of the account identification, marketing may come to the table with a bunch of data around what we think are the right accounts and some of the reasons why. But at the end of the day, it is the sales rep that owns the number, and they need to buy into who the accounts are. And then it's kind of the same thing with the plays. Like, I think marketing's job is to serve up a plan, which could be a bunch of different components, like different plays that can be run against different personas,
right,
and then kind of mix and match that with the individual rep. But at the end of the day, the rep needs to be the one making the call. I mean, they're the one that's got to be, have the ultimate responsibility. And I think marketing needs to sort of respect that and understand it. But I think, again, marketing's role is, I think, to bring as much to bear and as many great plays to the table as possible. and then work with sales to try to implement the right one so we can all hit the number.
So, so that makes sense. So then, Mike, once you have an ABM plan in place, and you think about, distributed sales organizations, sales management everywhere, marketing might be at headquarters and a couple regional offices, how do you think about the meeting cadence to drive this interlock between sales and marketing? What does that look like, and can you share with the audience how they might think about implementing that?
Yeah, I mean, this gets into a whole other area around like sales and marketing alignment, which is a giant topic. Yeah. I think at the highest level, the philosophy of the company should be that sales and marketing are not two separate teams, that it's two parts of the same team, and that's a revenue generating team, right? Yeah. And if you have that philosophy, I feel like you should start from the standpoint of every meeting should include some representation for marketing and sales. Start from that premise, and then back off and say, well, actually, for these reasons, we don't need marketing here. For these reasons, we don't need sales here. So sales and marketing jointly attend a lot of meetings here. We have a weekly pipeline review with all the RVPs globally. Marketing is in there. Multiple people from marketing, I'm usually in there. A couple of my VPs are usually in there. Field marketing is in there as well. All the RVPs that have their own calls with their teams, field marketing attends all those calls every single week, and they actually have dedicated time in the agenda as well. In addition to those, which is a fair amount, right? Because those are 2 weekly meetings that are happening at 2 different levels. I would say, my head of demand gen and the guy who runs the BDR team, they're talking at least daily, if not multiple times a day. They're basically attached because they need to be, right? So, and sales ops and marketing ops, kind of same thing. So, for me, it's really kind of more is less on this kind of thing. And it doesn't mean creating a new set of meetings. I would think about sort of just having the same meetings, but just having them be kind of joint meetings.
Right. And Mike, is there any difference between, at your level, at the senior level, between the CMO, head of sales, the CEO? How do you guys drive your meeting cadence? Is it weekly? Is it biweekly? And is there a dashboard or an integrated, commercial or go-to-market set of KPIs that you all use to keep your interlock?
Yeah. For all those things, it's absolutely, we have all those. I think the interesting thing is when Andy, who runs sales, and I started within a few months of each other. Very early on, rather than having one-on-ones with our CEO, we have a go-to-market meeting with our CEO. And so it's both of us in the room at the same time, right? And sometimes he's giving me a hard time because it's clear the problems at my court. And sometimes he's giving the sales, Andy a hard time because the ball's kind of a little bit more in his court. But I think that helps keep us all on the same page as opposed to having any miscommunication between different one-on-one meetings. So that's one part that I think most companies don't do that I think is really interesting. And it doesn't mean the CEO never talks to me individually.
Right.
If there's something about a person on my team or things, or what, of course, those happen. But the normal meeting cadence is that this is a go-to-market revenue kind of driving meeting, and we're both in the room, which I love. I think it's great. And then, of course, we have weekly dashboards that get shipped out to the whole management team that cover the basics within sales and marketing in terms of pipeline generation and current quarter forecast and any changes with the forecast, up or down.
Right.
As well as stuff around customer success and product development, everything else too. Yeah.
I love the go-to-market meeting of you and the head of sales in there at the same time. So for those listening, talk about something easy to drive interlock, right? And it's one less meeting for your CEO who would say, I'm into that. That's something you can implement today. So that's an easy one. All right, Mike. So when people think about these accounts and plays they're running, you talked about verticals. I'm getting success in manufacturing. We're getting stuck in financial services. How should reps share best practices on what's working?
Yeah, so I think, the sort of RVPs and the sales leadership needs to kind of identify the reps that are having some great success in certain areas and then figure out a way to share that. We have a weekly, Friday afternoon kind of sales training call, but it's often not, PowerPoint from somebody at headquarters. It's often the reps. We identified that a certain rep is doing something really well, and then we have them just talk about what they've been doing. So a lot of times it's more kind of peer-to-peer and sort of very kind of roll your sleeves up rather than just kind of PowerPoint by death from somebody in the corporate office who isn't actually out in the field, right?
Right. Mike, any thought, I guess last question before we wrap up, any thought around when you guys do any sort of revenue attribution and taking a look at a post-mortem on a won deal or a lost deal, is that an input into why you're able to sort of run all these dynamic plays? Because it seems like you guys have great velocity relative to how you're running ABM.
Yeah, I think I think the velocity partly comes from just we run a very agile marketing team, and it gives, again, a whole other topic. But we've actually adopted agile marketing here, which I think gets kind of that team velocity much higher. But yeah, I think that the postmortems on both won and lost deals are important, and especially the won deals, like the patterns of what's actually working. And understanding from a marketing standpoint, what are all those different touch points that help move the deal along?
Yep.
And then trying to repeat that kind of stuff, I think, is definitely helpful.
Wonderful. Well, Mike, listen, man, I can't thank you enough. What a great demonstration, and talk about a jam-packed 30 minutes of how the audience is going to take some benefit. So thank you so much on behalf of myself and SBI and our community for contributing to our body of knowledge.
My pleasure. It was a lot of fun to be here.
All right. So, Melissa, I think you have one more thing that you want to share with the audience.
Yes, we invite you to be a part of the SBI community if you're not already a member. To do that, please go to salesbenchmarkindex.com/register. And there you can select topics like account-based marketing or any topic of interest to you, and when you would like to receive the content about it. And I have a feeling everybody's going to enjoy seeing this show, so go ahead and take care of that now.
All right, wonderful. So once again, I want to thank Mike for his contribution and his time. If you're thinking about ABM and how it is you're going to implement it, you can unpack this show, and there's a lot of great action items for you to go and implement and keep driving that interlock between sales and marketing. So that's it for today. As always, until next time, I wish you good luck as you try and make your number.
This has been the SBI Podcast. For more information on the studio, SBI's Executive Briefing Center, our team, or to schedule a workshop, please visit salesbenchmarkindex.com.